Mr. Transformers 96 here with another video, and I'm going to be talking about a newly shown wave of Marvel Legends figures, and this time it is the Black Widow movie wave featuring the Crimson Dynamo Build-A-Figure. Very excited about this. It's not often that we get an entire wave out of nowhere. Official images is like the first thing that we see of it. Usually we kind of get a few of the figures at a convention, and then maybe a few more at the next convention, and then they release the final images, and in those final images they show like one new figure or the Build-A-Figure for the first time, something like that. It's very unusual to get an entire fresh wave shown for the first time the day that it goes on pre-order, but that's what we have here, so it's quite exciting. And yeah, I love Marvel Legends. I love comic and movie figures, but I do tend to prefer movie figures over the comic ones. So to get a wave that's very movie centric but with awesome comic characters is just perfect. This is a great wave in general. So let's get on to the individual specific figures of the wave, starting off with Black Widow. Obviously, being her wave, you need a Black Widow figure in it, and here we have her in her newest costume from the film. They did have a couple costumes that they could have chosen for this film to do in the figure-wise, and they chose the kind of newest one that's very similar to her other designs. It's a black costume. This one features a lot of gray in it though, which does separate it a bit from her other counterparts in the other films, with gold detailing, especially around the wrists. Going back a little bit to her kind of classic design, especially with the gold itself. Face sculpt looks pretty good, pretty standard for your Black Widow, style Scarlett Johansson face sculpts. She comes with 2 batons, interchangeable fists, as well as 2 pistols. Figure looks really nice. Not, anything groundbreaking from what we've had from Black Widow before, though. I think that the white suit for her would have been a great choice as well. I could see them doing that in like a 2-pack or something, so I'm sure we'll get that white suit eventually. I would be shocked if they did a second Black Widow wave, because, to be honest, they covered like all the movie figures that I could think of them doing in this first wave, so I think that this is going to be a one wave type of deal for this film. Here's the out of package look for her. Quite nice again. Good head sculpt, not anything better than the head sculpts that we've received from her in the past though. The one thing I will say is her feet look quite large, especially in this shot. This particular one looks quite awkward. It might just be the angle, because the other one doesn't look that ridiculous at all, but just for this angle it does look very strange. As you can see, she does come with the left leg of Crimson Dynamo, and there's Crimson Dynamo in his full form, but I'll discuss him a little later. And then we have our first comic figure of the wave, being Crossbones. I'm a big Crossbones fan, and I always wanted the Crossbones that came in like that 5-pack for as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, but that one was of course always extremely expensive. So I'm very happy to be able to finally get a Crossbones figure, comic figure of him, just in the regular wave. Looking quite nice. My issue with him is that his head looks a little small or his neck looks a little long. It's one of the two for sure though. Either shrink the neck or bulk up the head. Either way would work, but at the moment it does have a bit of an awkward look just on the portions that we see here, but overall I do think that it looks like quite a nice figure, and it's a neat kind of body sculpt. This is kind of an interesting one. I'm not quite sure if they've used it before. The structure of it doesn't look like any one that I've seen previously from any other comic figures. I could definitely see the arms being reused, but the body and legs in particular look unique to this one, which I'd be surprised about. Possibly he's kind of the first bearer of this new body sculpt, which is very muscular but not like huge. So that is kind of interesting. He does feature a couple of extra weapons there. They all look pretty unique too. They might be reused from somebody else, but I certainly can't identify who. Yeah, in out of package, he looks a little bit better proportion wise, but still definitely looks off when it comes to the neck and head range. He comes with the arm for Crimson Dynamo. Then next we have the Red Guardian, David Harbour version of the character, who I'm incredibly excited for in this movie. I think that he looks great from the previews, and the figure looks quite good. The issue I have with him is the face sculpt. I think the face sculpt is definitely looking under the standard quality for Marvel Legends. I think that they have proven to do much better face sculpts as of late with movie characters. And David Harbour, with so much facial hair, should be a pretty easy one to do, or at least easier than most. And yet, they didn't do a great job. It's recognizable, but it's certainly not to the quality that I would have hoped. However, this does like officially show Red Guardian with his shield for the first time. That was something that has not previously been shown or talked about at all. But this, confirms that he will have his shield in the film, which is quite cool. Very Captain America-esque, of course, however, with a kind of Soviet Union, flair, which is exactly what the character is as a whole. Looking like quite a nice figure, though. I could almost see them bulking up his torso a bit. He does look a little too thin, I would say. But overall, not too bad. This is the only weak chain in the whole wave, in my opinion. This is Spymaster. I don't know much about this character from the comics, but he has a very dull look to him. It's your standard kind of, body sculpt for a Marvel Legends figure, and really the head and kind of the logo on the chest are the only things kind of new with it. Doesn't look super visually interesting, and just looks like a cheap figure overall. Definitely the run to the litter here. This is my personal favorite one of the wave. I'm incredibly excited for Taskmaster in this new film. I've been a big Taskmaster fan, so to see him in his film adaptation is quite exciting, I will say. And the figure of him looks so much cooler than he does in the movie. A lot of people have been kind of bashing on how he looks just because of his kind of toned down, or a little I don't know how you'd say it, but he doesn't have as much flair in the movie as he does in the comics. He, wears a big skull mask with a hood, massive cape, buccaneer boots, and then he has a shield, sword, and crossbow. So they've taken him to a more realistic point in the film, which does kind of damper some of his more interesting, flamboyant features. Nonetheless, though, I think that this figure is a really nice representation of him. Looking very cool. Only issue is that he doesn't come with a Build-A-Figure piece. It's not like you get just so many accessories with him that I couldn't imagine them giving a Build-A-Figure piece. I definitely think that they could have included one. Nonetheless, I am the most excited for this figure just because I'm super excited for the character, and I think this figure really represents the character well, if not even better than he looks in the movie. And again, it's 100% a new sculpt, and just looking great. The one big thing I will talk about with this figure is those interchangeable hands, featuring almost like Venom-like claws. This should just be a guy in a suit, so I'm not quite sure what's up with the claws there, if that's like some sort of kind of Black Panther type of thing where he has like nails that come out, but that is extremely inaccurate for the character. Even if he he obviously adapts to whatever he sees and is able to master any task that he witnesses. So even if he's was fighting Black Panther in a backstory or something, he wouldn't be able to grow claws. He'd just be able to mimic his style of fighting. So I'm not sure what those claw pieces are about, because they look very interesting, and it would just be odd if he had claws that came out, because that's very animalistic, and Taskmaster is extremely unanimalistic, so I'm not quite sure what that's all about. As you can see, in this new film, they've really dulled down his shield as far as the size of it. It's now become a very small, kind of like a wrist shield, which I actually think is quite neat. Having a massive shield would put him very similar to kind of Captain America and Red Guardian, so this way he's got something that's, a weapon like them, but in his own unique style. Great looking figure, though. Really excited for that one. Next up, we have a Winter Soldier in his comic look. It's about time we got a comic Winter Soldier. We've had a lot of movie ones lately. And this looks like a really solid representation of him. I think that the body sculpt looks really nice. It looks like it's a totally new sculpt, which is awesome. The wrinkles and the texture of the pants specifically, I think look really nice, very naturalistic. The issue is there's so much detail in the clothing of this figure that the face has very much a comic look to it, but that almost makes the face look cartoony in comparison to the pretty realistic detail of the body. I could see the body being a movie figure for the Winter Soldier. So that's my only complaint about it, but that's not much of a complaint, that they did one part so good it makes the other part that was done fine not look as good. Overall, really nice though. Then we have Yelena here, one of Black Widow's kind of people that she's worked with in the Red Room kind of program, played by Florence Pugh. The figure here looks nice. I think the face sculpt's lacking. Overall, this wave with the movie figures, the face sculpts are a little lacking in general. I think this one lacks, as well as the Red Guardian for sure. And then the Scarlett Johansson one is fine, but it's nothing better than what we've seen. This figure does look nice. Totally new sculpt, which is always good. And overall just needs better face in my opinion. I think that one is weak. You really can't see much of a resemblance to the actress in my opinion. But the figure looks fine. She does come with the largest Build-A-Figure piece being the torso. And there's that's it. Yeah, that's the entire wave. Let's quickly talk about the Build-A-Figure of the whole thing. Alright, so here's the Crimson Dynamo being the Build-A-Figure of this Black Widow wave. Overall, I think that this is a really nice choice. I'm a big fan of these, of kind of Iron Man's armored villains. Obviously, kind of Whiplash and Mandarin are kind of considered, I'd say those two are considered his most classic villains. However, I kind of enjoy the armored ones like Ironmonger, Titanium Man, and here Crimson Dynamo. We have yet to get a Crimson Dynamo in any kind of iteration of the costume in Marvel Legends form, at least since, kind of Hasbro has taken over, if I'm not mistaken. So that's quite exciting. I think it's a character that's pretty well overdue for a figure. If you're asking why he's like the Build-A-Figure for a Black Widow wave, I'm not 100% sure if he's had many interactions with Black Widow in the comics ever. However, he does have a strong Russian background. The majority of this movie takes place in Russia, and obviously Natasha has a Russian, background in general. So I think that that's kind of the biggest connection between him and Black Widow, and possibly he's shown up in a comic or two with her in it as well. But this is actually a really nice version of Crimson Dynamo that they went with. They went with something a little more modern in its design. I would have liked almost a bit brighter of a red. They went with a really dark burgundy on the verge of just being a plain brown, but it is like a brown with a burgundy undertone, and therefore you get some of that red in there, because the Crimson Dynamo is pretty red. Some of his iterations is just a completely red suit, like bright red. So I would have liked a little bit more bright, a little more red in the armor itself. It's verging on brown, in my opinion. I think that the face sculpt's quite interesting though. I like the kind of gauntlet wrist pieces around the hands. It almost looks like there's tubes there with energy or liquid flowing through it. It gives it a little bit more dimension. My one issue with it is the legs. I have no problem with the legs, just how they look with the Build-A-Figure as a whole, but they are reused, and it's just annoying when they reuse something, even if it works well with it. You could definitely see them thinking, well, how can we cut money on this Build-A-Figure? How can we reuse a couple of the parts? And these are, of course, they've reused these legs a few times now. They originated with Ironmonger, one of my favorite Build-A-Figures, and they've used them on like the Captain America Winter Soldier wave. I can't remember what droid, like the Shield droid, had the exact same legs, and now they're reusing them here with Crimson Dynamo. So although I'm not huge on them reusing Build-A-Figure pieces, I do think that they look nice with this Build-A-Figure, and overall, are acceptable in my opinion. But yeah, overall, really excited about this wave as a whole. I think that there are some great figures here, and yeah, overall, they're just looking really nice. This wave is a great mix of movie and comic characters, in my opinion. I think it's one of the best mixes I've ever seen from Marvel Legends. You get four movie characters from the new film. None of them, repaints, none of them repacks, nothing like that. All original sculpts of new characters. And then you get a couple solid comic characters, in my opinion, with Crossbones and Winter Soldier. The weak point, of course, being a Spymaster, which I think is kind of the worst of Marvel Legends, where it's your standard body sculpt that's just paint. He's obviously the cost-cutting measure that allowed us to get so many new sculpts in this wave as a whole. So because of kind of his sacrifice, the rest of the wave is quite good. So I'm not complaining too much about him being in it. And then a Build-A-Figure that is large and chunky and based off of a villain. Personally, I always enjoy the Build-A-Figures when they are actually based off of villains and are large compared to the rest of the figures in the wave, which this one certainly is. Again, I think this is a fantastic wave, one of the best that they've done in a while here, and would probably be in the top contention for me personally. Is one of the best waves I've seen Marvel Legends do. Definitely not the best, but definitely in the top 5, I'd say, and maybe even top 3, just by what we're seeing here. Could change once I get them in person, but at the moment, I absolutely love them. They are on pre-order right now. I'm seeing some people reporting this wave as $20 a piece, like they've been for the last, I don't know, 5, 6 maybe 6 years or so. But that is not the case when it comes to Hasbro themselves. The Hasbro Pulse website does have them up on pre-order for $21.50, which seems to be the new kind of raised price for a lot of their figures in this type of scale. They did the same thing with the Black Series just recently, and this was kind of due to the rise in taxes for overseas imports implemented by the government. So that is definitely a shame to see a price rise on these figures, considering they've been at the price point for so long. But what are you going to do? I think that'll definitely, be taken into consideration for which ones I pre-order. However, with this wave being so good, I will say that I've pre-ordered the entire thing already. It's not often that the whole wave is one that I want, with the exception of Spymaster. And yet, so it was definitely one that I had to get on lock. I didn't want to have to hunt these things down. So there you go. That's my review of the new figures being shown from Marvel Legends. Can't wait to get them all. And yeah, it's looking like a great wave. Let me know what you guys think of them, and thanks so much for watching.